I'd like to call to order regular Town Commission meeting of August the 9th. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please call the roll.
Mayor Tom Peck,
Here.
Vice Mayor Kurzman,
Yes.
Commissioner Campo, Commissioner Fender,
Here.
Commissioner Mayfield.
Here.
Okay, we have no proclamations or presentations under item 2. Brings to item 3, public comment. We do have 2 public comments. One, I'm going to wait till we talk about the dock coverings. The other one is Thomas Campenny.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm here on behalf of the Indian River Lagoon Council, and we don't really care if you have projects that we funded, but we do want to hear about your projects. And it's very important that we get your projects on our website so that everyone knows what Sewalls Point is doing in connection with our river, in connection with the BMAP, and even if it isn't funded by IRLC, we would like, I guess, staff now, congratulations, Mr. Daniels.
Thank you.
To send to the IRLC whatever projects you have done in the I'd say in the last 3 years, regardless of whether it has anything to do with our funding or not. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that brings us to additions, deletions, or changes to the agenda. If there are none, please, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion made?
I'll second.
Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Kurzman,
Yes.
Commissioner Campo. Aye. Commissioner Fender,
Aye.
Commissioner Mayfield,
Yes.
Mayor Tom Peck.
Yes. And next item is the consent agenda. There's only one item on the consent agenda. I'll call for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion made?
Second.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Campo. Aye. Commissioner Fender,
Aye.
Commissioner Mayfield,
Aye.
Mayor Tom Peck,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kurzman.
Yes.
Okay, that brings us down. We have no second reading for ordinances, and we do have a public hearing, item 8A, ordinance 432, stormwater retention formula. Would the town attorney please read the ordinance title into the record?
Ordinance number 423 is,
32.
32.
oh, I must be having my dyslexia. Ordinance number 432, an ordinance of the Town Commission of the Town of Sewalls Point, Florida, amending Chapter 52, Stormwater Control Regulations, Article 2, Purpose and Intent, Section 52-24, on-site retention to modify the method for calculating required on-site retention and providing for severability, the repeal of laws and conflicts, codification, and an effective date.
Okay, are there any public comments on the ordinance? Seeing none. Commission discussion. I think my recollection is that we've already seen this one for the first reading already, so we're doing another first reading since it's been so long. And my understanding was that the only modification we were thinking about was to change the wording of new or substantial improvement with extensive alteration/reconstruction based on the definition in the building code. Mr. Hudson, you want to rescue me here before I say anything else?
Well, no, that's exactly right. That's one of the things that we wanted you to talk about. We also wanted, I was looking around for the town engineer, because we also, we've discussed simplifying the language that's in the formula, so it's just a little bit more plain English, plain math, and basically based upon the same standard, but using slightly different words to convey that. So those are the actually 2 things we'd like to have you talk about a little bit. So do you want me to amplify either of those?
Yeah, could you, I think, I'm sure we've all read it, but why don't you just go talk about the difference between extensive alteration/reconstruction versus substantial improvement. One's a cost and one's a square
The
footage, I
The
think.
substantial improvement that's in the code right now, which would remain in effect unless you change it, it's based upon a monetary, it's if the renovations exceed 50% of the value of the structure. Now, the issue that we have with that is that, who's going to put the price on the value? You know, we can pick some points like, is it the property appraiser's value? Is it, some kind of public available website that has a value on the property? It is a traditional standard. FEMA has traditionally used that. It's also been used in ADA applications, but when they do that, they apply it to the property appraiser's valuation, and sometimes even the property appraiser's initial valuation, which means you can get to 50% very quickly. And I think if you did that, you'd be basically affecting a lot more people than you intend to affect. And so the extensive alteration as an alternative is something that's in the Florida Building Code that basically it's based more on the scope of the change rather than the value of the change. So if someone is adding space to their property, then it would be subject to this additional retention requirement. So, and the building official is here if we need to amplify that as well, Mr. Reisinger. So.
Okay. Jack, do you want to say a few words, or have we covered it? Has Dan covered it pretty well? Okay. All right. All right, Commissioner Mayfield?
Yes, I had a decent amount of questions about this one. I noticed it's up for first reading, and I'd spoken to the town engineer about this too, and the first reading was over a year ago. I feel like we need to, obviously I support this, but maybe just an idea of doing getting it totally set before and then do another first reading, because I went through the formula. And the way it's written is right now isn't totally correct, even if I didn't fully understand it. But like the 27 times 12 should have been in parentheses. And then I think the amount that says this amount is the area required needs to be changed to volume. And then when I got the memo, and it was all good and it makes sense, but I didn't have the Florida Building Code. So to agree to the extensive alteration, what exactly was the extensive alteration? Obviously, I think there's something to do with having it be permitted, but I said, obviously, if you redo your floors and that's more than 50% of the area, you don't want to have to go out and make new berms and retention areas. So I just thought maybe the commission wanted to discuss a little bit more the definition of extensive alteration, if we agree with it, before we rush it to the second reading, because I like the idea of an item coming to the first reading fully intact and discussed, and then that gives the public time to, really critique it before you, because I didn't feel totally in control of it when I was reading it, so that is my input at this point. Meaning I really support this, and I want the properties to have more retention, but I just think we fully need to understand the change from the substantial improvement market value to this change to this, what it could mean, and just kind of hash it out before we approve it for a first reading.
Commissioner Fender?
Yeah, those are good comments, and, somebody will have to further dive into the definition between extensive alteration and reconstruction. To me, substantial improvement is less than extensive alteration and reconstruction. I think our goal, if I'm not mistaken, I could be, that we want more permeability and more control over floodwaters. And I'm not sure about the commutative aspect of the 27 times 12, but.
That was just that it needed some refining. It wasn't totally.
Okay. All right, but maybe the town engineer, the building official, or Dan can help me understand why substantial improvement is not preferable to extensive reconstruction or extensive alteration. I would even go, well, yeah.
Kind of the way I understood it, and it makes sense to me, is that you're talking about, the impervious, part of the property. So if you're expanding the footprint, that's more important than the actual value of the modification. That's why it made sense to me, but maybe Jack can probably explain that better.
Good afternoon, or good evening. There's a definition in the building code for existing structures, and underneath the Appendix J, they actually break it down into categories of work, and it is the building code that selects which one they feel is more extensive than the other. Just because it's named something doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be more extensive or less extensive than the next. But they put them in all the categories, and if you look at section AJ 201 underneath definitions, and the third line down, or the third paragraph down, categories of work, and that's where they actually list them as far as the stringency and requirements of each. So basically what they're saying is there's a repair, which is a minor, could be you're replacing your flooring or some roof. And then there's renovation. Of course, everybody does renovations. And then it comes to alteration, which is the one that you have in question, alteration. That's more severe than repair or renovation, but even alteration has even subcategories for alteration. There's an extensive alteration, and then there's minor alteration. Again, though, that's one of the most strictest of the building code for existing buildings, that they feel that there's extensive work being done when you get into that. More than likely, it's structural in nature, and more than likely, definitely needing a building permit. I wouldn't necessarily say all of these would be required to have a building permit, but definitely the more extensive ones would. And that's where it would probably, the red flags would come up when somebody applies for the permit or they're doing some of this work. It would hold up everything and say, hold on, let's look this over to see what you're doing, to find out if you're going to have to apply and comply with the new ordinance as far as the drainage. And it would go into the most extensive. And I'll give an example of the most extensive. They purchase, right now, this is what's happening. They're purchasing these older houses that were built quite a few years ago, and they're totally renovating them. They're taking the whole interior walls out, the plumbing, the AC, all the mechanicals, everything, and they're basically just going down to the shell. Well, to me, that's extensive alteration. They're replacing everything. That would definitely, to me, break that threshold, and they would then have to abide by the new ordinance. If they're just putting a new roof on, I would not say no, for sure no.
All right, thank you.
Vice Mayor Kurzman?
Yeah, the question I have is, it lacks teeth in some sense. So in other words, if I'm going to go and pave my half my backyard and make a great big patio out of it, and there's no longer going to be grass there, grass retained the water, that my new concrete slab is not going to hold it. Or if I put something back there, even the types of bricks and stuff, it's not going to absorb like the grass did. There's nothing in there that says that I would have to make an alteration to retain water. The other thing is, if I wanted to double size my driveway, or I wanted to make a horseshoe, once again, I'm adding more pavement, I'm taking away grass. There should be something in there that states that I'd have to retain more water if I should do something like this, because number one, if I do it in my yard, I'm going to flood my neighbor out, because it's going to go right off my concrete right into their yard. The other thing is, if I decide to do a horseshoe or double the width of my driveway, what's going to happen, we get a real heavy rain, it's going to come down real quick and probably flood my neighbor across the street. Once again, it should be, there's got to be something that would make me design something to have to retain my water because I've decided to alter my property, even though it's not my house, but it's still other aesthetics on the property. That's something that we're missing in there. That's where we lack some teeth in there.
Commissioner Campo?
Well, staff is recommending approval based upon consultation with the engineer and the building official, correct? Because that's what it says on our agenda packet. Staff recommends approval. Or maybe I should.
Yeah, we were hoping to get it approved on first reading, and
Right,
then if
right.
we need to make some modifications, we would incorporate
Right.
those into second
Right.
reading. If the substantial improvement question, I mean, I would almost recommend that you not hold up the process, but just keep moving forward with the approval, and we can always come back and readdress the definition of substantial improvement versus extensive renovation.
Yeah, because this has already been approved as a first reading, right?
It was technically,
Yeah.
February of '21, yes.
Yeah. So just for everyone to understand, I think what we're trying to do is cast the net a little wider as far as being able to have some influence on people that are doing modifications to their property and making them more responsible for stormwater retention. And so I'm okay in voting for it tonight, Commissioner Mayfield, or waiting. But if we wait, I think you should be specific about what you want to have happen so that we can pick it up on the next meeting. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Can I?
Please go ahead.
I'm just concerned about the substantial improvement. Okay, that's defined in section 5223, but we're doing 5224. So are we gonna, we're not changing the definition of substantial improvement in 5223, just changing the wording from 5224 to extensive alteration? Because does substantial improvement affect other ordinances and other laws that we have? Are we just changing, so we would have to change the wording in the ordinance,
Just
correct?
to be clear, I mean, I introduced a new concept here, okay? So, again, if that's going to slow the process down, I'd almost suggest, leaving that question aside. And
Right.
the more important thing is to get the additional retention in place.
I'm just concerned about, because I have done a decent amount of renovations. I just want to make sure we're clear what kind of renovations would spark you having to change your drainage outside of your house. And I don't feel like that's clear right now, because
Under either,
under either, because I didn't look at the Florida Building Code. I just, sometimes if you're doing an interior renovation that might be 50% of the area of your house, do we want to start requiring everyone to go outside to their yard and create these things? I'm not saying we're not, but I'm just not ready to say yes to the first reading when I'm not even sure that's clear. I don't feel, and we're approving it and there's a decent amount of changes. I actually really support it. If I was doing some homework or doing a project, I'd feel like I was turning it in kind of halfway. And I want to make sure it's more solid, just so that we fully understand what kind of renovation would spark someone to have to go. It's clear for what you talk about, Jack, I totally get it. A total reconstruction, gutting it to the studs, any new home, totally on board. But there's a lot of renovations, and I'm just not sure what that line is. Does that make sense to anyone?
I get where you're going.
Commissioner Campo?
He's looking at me.
So you would like to direct staff to clarify such and such by the next meeting, so that, because, we want to give Jack the tools to prevent things that have happened Mandalay. So we want to have more water retention. I'm okay in waiting
Yeah.
and making you more comfortable. And this formula here is like very,
I know.
I was just looking for, hieroglyphics and pi r squared. That's the only thing missing.
Byzantine comes to mind.
Yes, yes. So why don't we be more specific and ask staff to maybe give a couple examples of what the first reading would have been versus this? But I, again, want to give the building official, because
How do we do both?
we were faced with the need to, wish or plead with a resident who had a big
Right.
driveway, and Jack was like, I've got no tools, because
Right.
this is what the current code reads. So I don't want to delay in giving you those tools, so that when a resident builds, the Super Slide USA, and it's coming down someone's road, which now we have to spend extra money because the people down, I want you to have those tools to be able to retain as much water on the higher west end side. So I think I'm okay in waiting, and I want you to feel more secure about the formula, but maybe we could be more specific about what we want staff to do. And one suggestion might be to maybe give an example of what the first reading example would have been versus this new expanded vocabulary. Might that be helpful?
Yeah, and I want to reiterate how much I do support this. It should have been in place years ago, but should have, would have, could have. So I really do support it, and the ones that, the areas we're talking about now aren't going to be affected by this. My understanding is it would be the laws that were in place when they signed their contracts and the bill. So I have that issue with the substantial improvement definition. Are we changing that ordinance too, or are we just going to change the wording in this reading to be extensive renovation or alteration? Is that the plan? Or are we going to also be changing another?
That was the suggestion,
Okay.
to change it to extensive alterations, and then we can add in, I think easy enough, just the definition would be simply a reference
Right.
to the Florida Building Code definition.
So that's all going to go into 5224?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I
I
think
mean,
it would
unless the attorneys say differently, I don't know about the structure.
I mean, yeah, I'm not a lawyer either.
be Mr. Tercivia.
Well, actually, a little bit different point, Commissioner Kirschman's, Vice Mayor Kirschman's point. We're talking here all about substantial or significant alterations, but he mentioned things like driveways and patios. Do you also want to have a separate section that says, if you install some impervious surface of more than 100 square feet, 1,000 square feet, whether it's a driveway, a patio, that you have to deal with that somehow? Because I heard him say that, and that's not really addressed here.
No, it's not, and that's,
And I could have sworn we talked about that too at the time, didn't we?
we did, but it just hasn't been hashed out and really,
Let's definitely put that in there. Let's modify this to include that.
But we have no idea, as to, that would have to be with Joe, building official, to figure out how big. I mean, if you're putting in a
Well,
10 by 10 patio in your backyard, do you have to do something then, or is it 20 by 20? How big roughly does the commissioner, if you're putting in one of you in your driveway, or one of you said if you double wide your driveway, if you make it a horseshoe driveway, what's in square footage seems as a non-engineer to be one way to deal with it. Anything over a certain square footage, you may have to require some corresponding increase in pervious material to replace the impervious material paving over the grass.
Yeah, even 100 square feet is something. I mean, you're not talking large thing, but it's still something. I mean, so maybe we'll say,
if I may, just based upon these additional comments, I think what I'm going to suggest is that you move forward with the ordinance relying on substantial improvement. The reason for that is to simply expedite it and get the changes put in place, but at the same time direct the staff to devise a better understanding of the basis, those events which would trigger this additional retention requirements. Does that sound like a reasonable approach?
yes.
Sounds okay. May I? But this is first reading anyway, right? It has to come back a second time.
Right. Yes.
So
Right.
to recognize Commissioner Campo's point, to aid in speed and timeliness, we would hope that we would approve it on second reading
Okay.
next meeting, right? Or
Okay.
quickly, if that's the desire. So maybe if you came back for those changes, and also you did such a great job on the visuals for the rooftops that you could make a pretty picture of this in one visual aspect, including the math and I like the idea of including the pervious versus impervious improvements, and I bet it would sail right through. It's just my thought, especially since we have a timeliness issue. So,
That w-
Mr. Tercivia?
I
Yeah.
don't want to be a wet blanket on speed, but if we make so many substantial changes from here, we may need another first reading, which I don't think I've ever had 3 first readings, but maybe that might be necessary, because
I'm not-
the last thing you want is a lawsuit from a homeowner or someone who says, you took away my property rights and you didn't dot the i's and cross the t's.
understood.
So.
And I'm not saying make massive changes. I'm saying make it clear what's written here says.
Okay.
And I'm not saying that we're going to have to do that, but based on this conversation, there's at least a 50-50 chance in my mind that this may have to be first reading again.
I hope not, but okay.
Commissioner Mayfield?
yes, I think that I appreciate your innovative thinking, Dan, and seeing the struggle with the term substantial improvement that I was having with it also, changing it and not necessarily being fully invested in that change. So if you're keeping that the same as it has always been defined, and all we're doing to the formula is making it more readable, I believe that's what the town engineer said, and then I believe maybe there was some talk about, I discussed with the town engineer, but I really can't speak for him, that where it says the amount is the area, changing that to volume, but everything else staying the same, that's essentially what, nothing huge is changing, so I could get on board with approving that this time and then creating something in addition, is that what you're saying? To address the other changes that might be the ones we're talking about, the patio, impervious, and
varying
other
permutations,
alterations that might not
yes.
qualify?
Yes, the
That,
varying permutations and a tighter definition. If you stay with substantial improvement, it just needs to be clarified. It's, the dollar value is based on something objective that staff
Right.
can go to and point to.
but that would be in the other, that would be in the other
That would
ordinance.
be in a second kind of iteration, if you would, of the update.
Okay.
As you know, we just kind of grabbed the ordinance that was
Yeah.
looked at a year and a half ago and brought it forward, so.
Okay.
And then as we started looking at it, we started talking, well, maybe these things could be improved.
I appreciate all that. I like the idea that the
Yeah.
first and second reading are inherently pretty much the same. Isn't that the whole purpose? To have all that time for people to be like, this is yay or nay?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, if I can ask our town engineer to step up, and can you address the discussions that we've had about the formula? Joe? Oh,
Good evening, Commissioners. Joe Capper for the record, sorry I'm a little late. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of go to the on-site retention. It's on the, after Section 2, it says Section 5224. Just kind of want to clarify that paragraph there. Just, I think after looking at it, we can make it a lot simpler and so forth. So it's under general provisions. And first of all, I'm not going to address substantial improvements. I think you guys talked about that enough, so you don't need me to talk about that. So everything, all the wording in there about treatment and storage is accurate. I think when we get to the 3 inches times 45% or maximum improvement or allowable impervious area, just so you know where that came from, we were trying to find something similar that's approved already at the county, and that's their criteria. Basically, in our current code says 1 inch, okay, times percent, and 1 inch of retention, and we're talking about 3 inches times the percent impervious. In town, 45% is the maximum you can have in impervious surface. So basically, that's why we used 3 inches times 45%. What probably should be noted in that area, but we probably will make this a lot simpler than the words that I'm going to tell you right now. It should say the lot area in square footage, okay? And it kind of defines that we're probably going to do this in square footage. And so people know the reason we're dividing this, we're doing everything in inches and getting just to cubic feet eventually, a volume. We're not doing an area here. Basically, to get from square cubic feet to cubic yards, you divide by 27. And that really should have said 27, parentheses 27 times 12. So that's just a correction that needs to be made to that formula. But I was going to even make it simpler than that, okay? So it's really simple for people to do this. But again, the word, this amount is a volume. That's what we're talking about in cubic yards. And from that, basically what a person would be able to do is determine how much volume of water he can hold. He can do that by storing it in excavating and creating berms. He doesn't have to do it in one, he's got many choices here, okay? He can provide retention areas, he can provide swales, he can provide berms. I've looked at the lot sizes, they've been differed over the years. This is not a significant change to ask people to do. In essence, it's probably, if you want to make it a little simpler, it's like saying, right now you're asking 1 inch, which basically you're asking is about 1.5 inches. You're asking for an extra 1/2 inch is all you're doing here. And so that's not a substantial amount of volume, extra volume that we're asking people to hold on their lot. The other thing you should recognize that anything we do drainage-wise for roadway improvements, we're being asked to provide about 1.5 times percentage of the standard requirement because we're in an impaired water body here at the Interim River Lagoon and the St. Lucie River. So we've got plenty of reasons to do this 1.5 inch extra, this 1/2 inch extra, okay? I just want to make sure you understand that point of view on this, okay? Other than that, I mean, I don't see this as a significant change to out there. Would like to also say is as Commissioner Campo mentioned, we're trying to give Jack some way of providing some more retention on these sites. But you all should recognize, we will be doing, and we are waiting for a resiliency grant to come in, okay? We have a grant, we just have to get the contract from the state, okay? And in that, we are going to be looking at all the stormwater requirements in town. We're going to look at both not only what we do for the roads, but what private properties do, what property owners associations do. So that's going to come in, and we may keep something even larger than this when we get done with that study. But that's going to take some time. And so I just want you to know this is an interim phase, this ordinance here, but we need something on the books, which we thought we were doing whenever the first time this was presented 6-9 months ago. So again, I just want you to know more's to come. Just remember that. Because we are spending a lot of money on stormwater retrofits, so we need to make sure that we can allow all these to work properly. So, and it's all about resiliency, it's about sea level rise, it's about all these things that we're trying to accomplish on this small little peninsula here. So, anything anybody has questions about?
Commissioner Fender?
So just point of order, do we need a friendly amendment to push this past first reading for the speed issue?
Did we have a motion?
Huh?
Did we have a motion?
That's what I'm asking. Do we need a
think-
motion? What did I say? Friendly
You have
amendment?
I
amendment?
think you made a
Sorry.
motion,
That's all
didn't
right.
You didn't? Okay. Do we have a motion?
I'm asking if we need one.
Yes.
I'll make the motion to move forward with the current changes, but with the ask from staff to come back with clarity on the calculation and the visual to make it clear to us what the change is, and hopefully with that, we'll have enough data to pass a second reading.
How about also for the driveway?
And add content on pervious versus impervious driveway additions. Thank you, Commissioner. Vice Mayor.
I have a-
Commissioner Mayfield?
I just wanted to ask Glenn, if we're doing just this, if we were to add the driveway thing, is that going to significantly change it before the second reading, or?
I'm thinking you're
Don't
going
be a
to,
wet blanket.
I'm trying to,
I think you're going to need another first reading. I mean, you're making a lot of changes. If you think about it, it's just 2 weeks difference. Right, 2 weeks difference, and I'm.
Oh, yeah,
come on,
so-
let's get it right. We're meeting every 2
Peace.
weeks.
I'll retract my friendly amendment, I keep saying friendly amendment, to my motion, and save it for phase two. But we'll want to do it, but we want to get this one in quickly. Is that enough? Removing the pervious versus impervious, will that be enough to
Right, because on the
dry
driveway,
blanket?
at this point, unless Joe's going to calculate it in 10 seconds in his head, I don't know if you have any idea. Are we talking 100 square feet of driveway or patio, or, I don't know what your recommendation is going to be. And I
Well,
don't
the
want-
calculation will be the same, right? Based on what's actually in the,
No, this would be different, because substantial improvement is more than 50%. So if you're doing 50% of your house, that's a whole different story. A driveway project could be 5% of your house, right? If you're replacing your driveway or expanding your driveway by putting down 100 new square feet of pervious pavement,
we're talking about 45% here, are we not?
I think what we're talking about is any additional impervious additions that you make to a house. Do we want to look at that a little differently than just this?
But I'm saying that if you leave it as is, because the town manager claims this is exactly what the county uses, with some clarity and some visuals, next reading two, we should have enough to,
it's like a totally different thing. One is your home and your structure, and that's the same for the alteration and the substantial improvement. And then the other thing is, if you do your driveway, do we want to make, and then we could do that extra thing, like it would be a whole new thing.
I would say leave it, my motion, which you can not approve, is to leave it with substantial improvement and save a change to substantial improvement for phase two, along with the impervious driveway addition later.
Mr. Daniels, do you have something to add?
Yes, I just wanted to, maybe this would help if we move forward with this. This could really just be another separate ordinance change. We wouldn't have to wait for another change through the office, and this is something we can work on and bring forward, maybe as a first reading in 2 weeks for you. There are a lot of ordinances out there in other coastal jurisdictions that I'm aware of, and we can reach out, and if that helps Joe, we can get some of the regulations that maybe they have that would work for us, and have that together for you. If Glenn can, help us through that and have it for a first reading for you, so you do the second reading at the next meeting, and the first reading of this new ordinance that would cover driveways and other structure improvement. Just, if you added an addition to your house, you're really cutting away from that property that you have available to drain the rainwater, the stormwater. So, and I think that's the way they've looked at it in other jurisdictions. But
Commissioner Fender.
So just to tie it up in a bow, my motion on the floor is to ask for approval of the first reading with this, as is, with whatever changes are required for clarification, and at the same time, come back with a second Phase 2 ordinance, as town manager just articulated, to start working on Phase 2 as quickly as possible. But the spirit of this motion is to give the building official some quick tools to do what we need to do to solve an immediate problem. So I don't know if that's a properly worded motion, but I'm trying to get this one, first reading on this to move forward.
This way has a 2-week head start before.
Yes.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Campo?
Aye.
Commissioner Fender?
Aye.
Commissioner Mayfield?
Yes.
Mayor Tompeck?
Yes?
Vice Mayor Kurzman?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, that was rough.
I hope you're fairly clear on the direction we
Yes.
gave you. Sometimes we talk about a lot of things, and it's a little difficult to decipher.
I'll
exactly
re-listen
what
to the
you want.
meeting too. So.
Okay, our next item is item 9, resolution number 938, appreciation resolution for the interim town manager. Would town clerk please read the resolution into the record?
A resolution of appreciation for dedicated service. Whereas the town of Sewalls Point
not in
is
our
an
agenda.
incorporated municipality in Sewalls Point, Florida, and governed by the commission-manager form of government. Whereas after the resignation of its town manager, the town of Sewalls Point commissioners needed an interim town manager to be the chief administrator of the town, who was responsible for the daily operations. The town of Sewalls Point commissioners takes great pride in the quality and level of services afforded to all those who live, work, and visit the town. Whereas the town of Sewalls Point commissioners needed an interim town manager who could unite and motivate town staff to continue this high level of service. And whereas Dan Hudson, an experienced town manager with a long history of dedication and service to Martin County municipal government, was appointed to serve as interim town manager. Whereas Dan Hudson served the town of Sewalls Point with honor and integrity from February 2022 through September 2022, while guiding town staff and the town commissioners seamlessly through operations and the annual budget process until the hiring of a long-term town manager. Now therefore be it resolved that the town of Sewalls Point town commissioners are extremely grateful to have received the opportunity to work with Dan Hudson through this important transition and for all that he has brought to our town, both personally and professionally, during his appointment as interim town manager.
Okay.
I'll move approval.
Second.
Any discussion?
Let's give a round of applause for Dan Hudson.
I guess we need to officially call the roll, though, right? I do. We also have,
And in the meantime,
we have the...
call the roll.
Yeah, in the meantime, call the roll. We also have the key to the city.
Wow.
Yeah.
I believe.
I turned in my keys yesterday, by the way.
I don't know if this opens the men's room or not, but,
Mayor Tompeck,
yes.
Vice Mayor Kurzman,
Yes.
Commissioner Campo,
Aye.
Commissioner Fender,
Here.
Commissioner Mayfield.
Yes.
All right.
I'll turn around so I can seal it back.
There you go.
Yeah, having it in the ceiling back now is better.
So thank you.
Awesome. Well done.
It's a nice touch.
Wow, I wonder who wrote that.
Your wife.
I was going to say, I'm not sure I recognize the person you were talking about there. It's just like, but in all seriousness, thank you. I do appreciate the opportunity to serve the town and the residents here in the last 6 months or so, and really certainly is the highlight of my post-retirement career. I'll say it that way for sure. But yeah, I've enjoyed the opportunity. I've enjoyed the chance to get to know the residents more than I knew before. So thank you very much for allowing me to serve.
Well, don't walk away too fast, because the next item is the sale of 7 Heritage Way lot, and you might want to bring us up to speed on this item as well.
Well, as you know, the commission has talked about this also for some time. The last direction was to move forward with rezoning the property in order to offer it for sale. And at the last meeting, there was a direction to include deed restrictions to protect the oak tree that's on the property. In communication with Glenn's office, the attorney's office, that's fairly simple to accomplish. It's simply put into the contract. We'd probably need to put it into the notification of sale as well. So we have the rezoning letters, and the rezoning is the letters are an extra step. We're not required to send letters, but just thinking it would be a good idea to send at least to the people on the street on Heritage Way, and just notify them. And so we're asking you to approve the mayor to sign those letters. We'll get them printed up for him, and direct the documents to include deed restrictions to preserve the tree, and then the dates for the public hearing would be September 13th at 5:15 for the local planning agency and 5:30 for the town commission. So.
Okay, have any discussion from the commission?
Well, I just wanted to go into public record that I did a re-rendering of that lot to include a second story. Now, this is just a suggestion, and it shows the possibilities of being able to save that majestic oak and save the crown of the tree, and still honor the setbacks by adding the second floor. Comes out with the 4,000 square foot home. And if you look at the house on, what's the name of this, Delano? Yeah, there's a house on the corner of Miramar and South Sewalls Point Road, which is actually built around the tree, which I thought was very clever. It shows that we can do the same thing. And the greater issue here is being able to use all of our assets the most efficiently as good managers. We've got an idle asset. There's possibilities of using it for water retention or a septic to sewer pump station, but I think having this as a single-family home is more conducive to that neighborhood, and it allows us to liquidate some cash so that we can buy some property that would be more efficiently used in stages 2 and 3 of the South Sewalls Point Road paving. So I'd like to make a motion to approve the mayor to sign the rezoning letters, to direct documents to be produced, including a deed restriction to preserve that majestic oak tree, and to approve the dates for the public hearing for the rezoning.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Commissioner Mayfield.
Yes, I just wanted to say I do appreciate Commissioner Campo the effort and initiative taken to make sure we can preserve the tree. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Please call the roll.
Mayor Tompeck,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kurzman,
Yes.
Commissioner Campo,
Aye.
Commissioner Fender,
Aye.
Commissioner Mayfield.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks again, James, for your hard work on that item.
Thanks for your patience, and it's great to have a unanimous vote.
Okay, the next item is item 10B, which is dock roof amendments. And would you like to lead us off, Mr. Hudson?
This one's going to be more of a handoff. We've asked Bonnie Landry and Associates to kind of begin taking the lead on this, and they've, I think I mentioned previously, Bonnie has added a lot of value to the concept here, so she's going to lead the discussion.
Thank you. Welcome, Bonnie.
Thank you. And I have a PowerPoint, if we can get that up and running. While they're doing that, I'll introduce the item. This item is discussing the proposed standards and procedures for permitting a dock roof to be built higher than the adjoining riparian upland.
Pull it up here. Here.
And I can do it without, but
I think she's got it right here. Yeah.
I think that they saved it to the desktop, didn't you, April?
It's on our website under the packet.
Sorry for the delay.
Is it that one? No.
I do have a thumb drive.
You have on the thumb drive?
Always come prepared. You never know with technology.
Starts at page 25.
Oh, you're kidding me. Oh, there it is, VCLA, okay. Whew.
Gotcha.
Got a little break there. We have all these, there we go, okay, we're finally starting. Okay, so as I said, we have, the purpose of this is to try to make it more equitable for all property owners. So, the town code includes standards for marine structures, and that's docks and dock roofs. And town staff identified that these standards on a practical basis prohibit some dock owners for properties on the eastern side of town to not be able to build their dock roof. Specifically, the height may not be higher than the adjoining upland property. So these eastern properties that are low or near sea level are excluded from the process. And the town building official prepared these beautiful illustrations of the difference between the elevation and how that takes them out of the process for that 15 feet. So we've studied the issue. Began studying it last fall in response to a resident's request. And after numerous discussions regarding the overall design, that would be the height, the size, and the color, and concerns about possible seagrass impacts, the town commission recommended staff develop some guidelines for the process so it would be more equitable to other property owners in the town. And this process was to include standards and design guidelines to permit these dock roofs, which would exceed the height limit within certain limitations. And in preparing this, the town planning consultant myself reviewed the standards for other Florida cities to get some examples, and we also looked at DEP codes and created a matrix of these codes, and that matrix can be found in your packet. I just have a illustration of it on the next slide. That's just one page of it, but the entire thing is in your packet. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. It's driving you crazy. Okay. And I did fail to introduce Miriam Sanabria is with me today. My other employee is out on a medical leave, and we appreciate Miriam standing in for us. Are we good now? Okay. So as an example, we looked at communities such as Cocoa Beach, Sebring, Jupiter, Florida, Fort Myers, Palm Bay, and Naples. We also looked at we also met with the Board of Adjustments, and we met with them in July, and the draft before you today includes requests from some of their languages and some of the recommended changes. Some of the things that they wanted to include is, they had a good point. What if somebody wants to put up plaid? So they said, make sure it's a solid one color, not striped, no pattern. The cage that it's built of would be able to withstand hurricane force winds. We added some to the ordinance that they would have to remove the cover, not the cage, but just the cover, if there's a storm coming. And they wanted to put teeth in that to make sure people would follow through and do that, because obviously the risk in people not removing the risk is it's flying all over town, and it would just be a hazard. They also wanted to make sure that those roofs did not obstruct the water views of the surrounding properties. They didn't like the side curtains, so I don't have an illustration, but it's just kind of a dome structure, but no side to it, because the side could come off with the wind and also would obstruct the view. So it's just a dome structure that you would have. So no side curtains, and this language would allow the Board of Adjustments to look at the proposed roof and make a decision if it fits the criteria that's in the code. And we did have to remove that docks have to be pitched, because obviously they're not going to be pitched, they're going to be dome. So it was just some cleanup. So I added a slide to have the language up there in case y'all wanted to go, item by item, but there is the ordinance as it's written. So there's 5 criteria. I guess the 5th one got cut off. Sorry about that. That was a typo. But you'll have the whole ordinance in your packet. And then this is the language that we're going to be discussing a little bit further about the condition of approval, that you'd have to remove it. And if you don't remove it, you may lose your alternative compliance, meaning you'd have to remove both the cover and the frame if you don't follow the rules. And we did have some discussion about the length of time, when is that window of opportunity where you must remove it. And we also talked about it following the packets going out, about how strong we want the language to be to make sure they remove it during a storm. So that brings me to my next slide. Mr. H.B. Barrett, we spoke on Friday, so this was after the packets went out. And as a member of the Board of Adjustments, he wanted to have the commission consider changing it to 24 hours. And his basis for the 24 hours is, if there is a storm declared at 5 p.m., and you only have 12 hours to remove it, you may have to be in the dark removing it. So that gives you more time if the declaration is made at night, so that you have daylight to remove it. So it just gives the property owner more time, depending on when that storm is declared. And the other recommended item that he had mentioned to me is, instead of having the roof cover, if failure to remove may result in the permanent loss of alternative compliance, he and some of the members wanted it to have more teeth and say will, meaning if you don't do it, you're taking off, you're done. You can't do this anymore. There's no second chance. So it is stronger than the way it's worded in your packets, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. So my recommendation is that you review the language. If you have any changes, we can talk about those. Unlike the previous agenda item, this is not an advertised hearing. This is a workshop. So you can make all the changes you want here, and then we will schedule the first reading of the ordinance. This is just the first time you've seen it, so we will certainly take your input. And Miriam is prepared to take notes, and very good notes, so that we make sure we include everybody's comments in that. And so I'm available for questions.
And I thought before we had commission comments that we'd ask HB to come on up and talk about your comments. Was there anything additional to what Bonnie had put in the slide you wanted to discuss? Okay, please come on. Oh, yes, please come on up.
Good evening, Commissioners. It's been a while since I spoke before you, for which I'm sure you're all pleased. And to use one of Commissioner Fender's comments, I'm going to offer friendly amendments to the proposed ordinance. I make my comments to you tonight based on living in the Keys for over 30 years, and I saw time and time again how people try to find a way around county and city codes and ordinances. The proposed ordinance as written will allow for that. What I want to discuss is what's up on the screen right now, so I won't go into the exact location of that, but it starts with as a condition of. What you need to understand is how the roof cover itself works, and it was very helpful that one of our BZA members actually has one of these roofs. His roof is actually constructed out of either vinyl or sunbrella, and it's rectangular in shape to fit over the top of the cage. The cover has grommets all the way around it, and how it's attached to the cage, they simply use bungee cords. And he indicated that it's easy to remove the cover by attaching the bungees and rolling up the cover. So it's a very simple process. The information that you have in your board packet lives out 3 of the recommendations that were agreed upon by members of the BZA at our last meeting. 2 of them you have up there, the 12 hours changing into 24 hours, as she indicated. That's pretty much an easy one. The second one is the document that you have indicates that you have to remove your cover within the time period specified of a hurricane warning. I had a tropical storm / hurricane because attaching bungee cords, a tropical storm is going to take them out as well. The third item may result in the loss of alternative compliance to will result in a permanent loss of alternative compliance. We'll put teeth into the ordinance. Since the applicant will have to come before BZA for final approval, we can stress to the applicant that the last sentence is not negotiable and that no excuses will be accepted for failure to comply. The applicant will need to be proactive and not only have a plan A, a plan B, but also a plan C well before the storm to remove that cover. Use of the word may will open up a can of worms which will be dealt with by either you, the commissioners, the BZA, or the building official. Remember, approval of the ordinance, you'll be granting citizens a privilege that they do not currently have. Make them play by your rules and take away that privilege if they don't abide by it. Get the ordinance right the first time and make it airtight and have no wiggle room. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Good
HB.
timing.
Commissioner Mayfield.
Yes. Just for clarification, before I get to my comment, for the town manager and the prior town manager, we took care of the existing dock covers that were in violation with the prior ordinance, correct? They're all taken care of? The ones that were in existence, we did another ordinance
There
prior.
are 2 that are still non-compliant.
Okay.
So as of
But meaning they
today,
have
but
the-
yes, they have the mechanism to.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, I just want to clarify that, and that the last meeting in June where we talked about this, we were talking about conditional use, and now we have come up with a different way to address the potential people that would like to do this also with the alternative compliance, is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, that was, actually, that was Bonnie's suggestion. The attorneys and I had kind of been back and forth on conditional use, variance, special exception. So it just really is very innovative. Just say, this is a different way of complying.
Okay. So I think it was good. I like the BZA suggestions a lot. A good job, and thanks to them for giving their input. The changes that were also just discussed, I think those sound good. I think that we need to, one of my questions was, the way it appears in our agenda is, this comes under section 62-176, and slash out variances. And when you read about the variances, I think it applies to all marine structures or any marine structures. So I would wonder if we want to add a different code as opposed to we want to take out the variances to put in this, because the variances appear to me to apply to things besides boat covers, boat roofs, dock, whatever. We also had discussed a fee. I'm not saying that it's required, but I think we discussed that when we were talking about the conditional use permit. And then I do think maybe there's still the canals and inland waterways that I thought we discussed about addressing. And could I get clarification, Bonnie and Glenn and Dan, whoever, that this is just for all the separate rules, everything written here is just for the people who meet all the compliances except for the height requirement, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. It was specifically written for that one thing.
Okay, so everybody else, people on other waterways are free to operate as has been in the past?
It's only if you can't reach the height because of the riparian rights. And Glenn's associate Susan was very clear to make sure that was included so that we were clear who it was for.
Right.
So she added some very specific language in the beginning of this where, I think it's in that section up on the screen.
Yes,
It's
because
constraints that exist, and it's very specific, and that's why it was written that way.
I like that. I saw that you buzzed your button since you're right next to me. Did you want?
We've been talking about this, and we kind of wanted to point out, because you'll notice that the struck-through language, the 62-176 language in the beginning, had given the town commission the authority to vary technical requirements in a much broader sense. And we had the sense, and this is a while ago sense, we wanted to confirm it, that you didn't want to be involved in that, and that would include things such as, docks may no more than 4 vessels, docks on canals shall not extend more than 25%, no fuel pump stations, no marine. So there's a whole list of other rules that you had previously, still do actually, the ability to grant a variance. I don't remember ever anyone coming in front of you in the last 10 years or so. But do you want to maintain that ability, or do you want that gone, and it is what the code says? You can't have fuel stations, you can't vary all these other requirements, because as Bonnie said, we're only dealing with the roof issue here. But as part of that, we had all gotten the sense that since this never came in front of you, and I'm not sure you ever wanted to get down the path of varying those issues. If you do, then we'll tweak this language.
Mr. Fender.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I just wanted to, just have a few more things. I don't have strong feelings one way or the other. I would lean towards not changing something else just to take care of this, particularly since what you said, and have many people been coming forward with variances. I don't know, I don't know why we would change something unless, but I'm open to the other commissioners' thoughts on that. And the addressing of the canals and the inland waterways, I think deserves a little looking at, because under this, I believe, they could get a dock roof or a boat cover. Sorry, I keep saying that wrong. And maybe we need to require neighbor approval. I don't know if you can actually make something like that in ordinance, or you have to get approval, and every time you get a new permit, something like that. I'd be open to ideas there. But right now, I think how it is, if you are on those areas, you could get a cover, and that would be looking quite different in a canal right across from each other than on the open Indian River Lagoon.
And I think there's still a notice to the neighbors, so that's not been taken out.
But is it I mean, okay.
When you get a permit, right, guys?
So if somebody says, no, you can't do something?
Well, no, they can comment, I don't know how Jack handles it how do you handle it if there's, because, he's the permitter.
Okay.
And they do have to send out a letter.
Right, I know that, but what happens if your neighbor's like, no, I won't let you?
It's just a notice to the owners of what your intent is, and that they have 10 days to object to it. And then it's very vague as to what, I can do. What I've told them is unless it's something that's regulated by either the building code or the commission, the code of ordinances, there's nothing more I can do. So they'd actually have to have a legitimate reason. For instance, it's too close to my property, it's in the setback, or something like that. It would have to be some violation of an ordinance or building code.
Okay, that's why I mentioned if you could, just ideas for the canals and the waterways, that's it.
Mr. Torcivia?
Jack's pretty much covered it. I was going to read you the section that you were all talking about. It says, any proposed dock located in a canal, lagoon, bay, or any other waterway not directly located on the St. Lucie or Interim River prior to issuance of a building permit, must obtain and submit to the building official the written consent of all record owners of the adjacent upland riparian property on the form provided by the town, provided, however, that the consent of record holders shall not be unreasonably withheld. And that's where Jack was talking about. They just don't like it. That's not really a good reason. They've got to have some significant reason why they're objecting. But that's what your current language is and has
And
been
that's just for the canals and the inland?
for any not located on the St. Lucie or Indian River.
Okay.
Kabush.
Commissioner Fender.
Yeah, so first things, thanks for the due diligence on this. This is a very easy to understand process, so thank you for all the good work, especially from the building official. 2 or 3 points. So one is, thanks for the clarification, Mr. Torcivia. I also was interested in what the letter of non-consent might be, and, you know, I've been frustrated over months and years that process is not more prolific and more vocal, but I don't know how you're going to ensure that item 1 is adhered to. I hope there's a way, and I hope that process you described does it, but you'll have to convince me. I'm also wondering where the fee is for the seagrass. Maybe you could just address where we left that off, and if we did and why. And then I wonder about the word may, the last word may, and I think I heard you say will. Is that will or shall? Should it be a shall instead of a will? I'll leave it to the attorney to decide what the appropriate verbiage is.
I think that was a comment from Mr. Barrett, that he would prefer that word be will instead of may.
Yeah, and I'm asking about shall.
Or shall.
Okay, I don't
And it will, shall.
Will and shall the same.
Okay, if you say so. And 24 hours is fine with me, and I think those are my my notes. And nice job with the alternate compliance.
Commissioner Campo?
Yeah, could you go back to the previous, one more, I thought we were talking about boat roof covers, and now I'm seeing dock roof covers. And I'd like to maybe soften that on I.
That's a good point.
Roof cover and frame will not obstruct. I'd like to throw in significantly obstruct. I mean, we've got to think, why do people move to Sewalls Point and buy property on the water? It's so that they could put their boat. You can't buy a lot on Sewalls Point that's on the water for less than $2 million. People are spending a lot of money to live on the water. They're not going to put a dinghy, so they want to protect their asset. And I think we need to, I don't know, are people covering their whole docks or just boat roof cover? I mean, I don't know where that word came from. But
I think it should be boat. I think I myself find myself saying dock instead of boat. So I think it should be boat. We're talking about boat covers to protect the boat, not protecting the dock.
Right.
And there's some DEP rules on that too, I believe, for dock covers.
So if it's a boat roof, then you would think it's roughly the size of their boat. If it's their dock, it could be the whole thing, which we don't want. But when you come to obstructing, I was walking down my street just not too long ago, and a neighbor said, "Hey, aren't you on the commission? I want to show you something." My neighbor's branch fell on my part of the yard. And I was like, okay, what should I do? And I'm like, well, you have 3 choices: either haul it away, push it over there. But neighbors, love thy neighbor. If a neighbor can get back at a neighbor from 3 years ago because they looked at them the wrong way and say, hey, that roof obstructs my view, I think it shouldn't be any obstruction. It should be, I don't know, I'm going to say significantly obstruct the water views.
Yeah, the only problem is that's not a quantitative term. It's a qualitative term, so you can't really say what's significant and what's not significant.
Well, it's the same the way it is right now.
Reasonable man approach, I understand, but nothing common about common sense.
Reasonably obstruct. How about that?
I don't have a problem.
Again,
with
we're
it.
workshopping it, and you're making comments, and thanks for being here, by the way.
Yeah, and where that came from, there was a discussion at the Board of Zoning Adjustment about how it really depends on how long the dock is. And I didn't want to say, okay, for any dock longer than X, Y, Z, I mean, it would have been too specific. So that is what that's supposed to take care of. And I'm thinking that it would probably be one of the neighbors that would have contested the building permit. But at the end of the day, the Board of Zoning Adjustment can either grant alternative compliance or deny it. And it would be based on the evidence that they have. So there might be a neighbor that takes a picture from their view and says, you know, this is why I think it obstructs it. But I agree with the mayor. We want to leave it just something, does it obstruct?
And I think in the matrix, didn't we talk about a maximum of 500 square feet or something like that in the matrix?
We did look at, some municipalities do have that square footage, but we did not include it in the code. But it's up to the commission if you'd like to get that specific on that. But I did hear from the public just now, maybe we call it a boat slip cover, and that's really specific. I thought that was a good idea. If you're concerned, you know, if the language looks like you're covering the whole dock, that's obviously not the intent. It's just a dome over where your boat is parked. So a boat slip cover might be more descriptive, and just an idea.
Yeah, unless there's language that says something like significant obstruction, I won't be going along for this ride. I think it's, on the Indian River side, it's got to be a long dock. So you figure 50 or 100 feet out there, and if someone says, hey, 50 or 100 feet out of that general area, there's some obstruction, I think that's unreasonable. I mean, on the Indian River side, you got to get out to get the depth for a boat that big. And I like numbers. You know, numbers are my friend. You know, 2 + 2 always equals 4. I think we should put something in there as far as the size of the boat cover, because that gives Jack, you know, something to calibrate where you don't have to measure, you know, obstruction, significant obstruction, that kind of thing. But
Well, and the rationale in the matrix I thought was good for the 500 square feet.
Yeah, and that's how we came up with the 500 square feet, because one of the commissioners, I can't remember who, was talking about, you got to think about what size boat's going to be here. And it's going to be a big boat because it's, you know, it's valuable land out here. So we based it on, I want to say a 30 or 32 foot boat and a length of 15 or 16 feet. I can't remember how, but somehow we came to 500 square feet.
with,
That was, I think it was like 456 feet, so I was going to suggest 500 square feet. So we can make it that specific if that is the desire of the commission.
I don't know what the number is, but I like numbers that the,
Yeah, I like the 500 feet.
Okay.
Just out of curiosity, I was curious why we didn't consider any kind of a permanent cover as opposed to just a temporary cover that would be taken down for a hurricane. I mean, we have permanent covers on the west side, I'm sure. Is there any reason we didn't consider that? Because maybe the owner would rather put a permanent cover on there that he doesn't have to take down.
Yes, we did. So the reason why it's written the way it is if it is a more permanent structure, right now, and we discussed this pretty in depth at the Board of Zoning Adjustment, if it's just a vinyl or canvas dome, the supports are like this big around. If it's a real roof, the supports are bigger, and I'm probably exaggerating a bit. But if the supports are that big, then it really will obstruct the view. But if they're skinny, they won't. So that was the thought, and that's why they wanted to go with canvas and the smaller, we call it a cage, the smaller cage, because the frame is smaller and will be less likely to obstruct the view of the water for other residents. But I should point out that the structure is still built to sustain hurricane 170 miles per hour winds. The only thing it won't is the dome. Yeah, that's why you got to take it off.
Commissioner Mayfield?
Yes, just a few little tidbits. I think it would warrant checking, but I believe the DEP, to approve even an exempt dock on the Indian River Lagoon, it says that it can't be more than 1 foot past the edge of the boat. or the boat lift. So in some ways, that would just kind of take care of the square footage requirement, because I don't think anybody's going to put a,
You're right.
I think that's what it says, so I'm not sure that we need that.
And they talk about the overhang, and that's
Yeah, the
why
overhang.
we didn't feel you had to put that in there, but
Right.
we're willing to put that in
Yeah.
there. But it is kind of understood, because they do still have to go through that other process.
And then the, the terminology, I believe that most of those people are having boat lifts. So if you wanted to say boat lift cover, boat slip, I think implies more a marina where you slip the boat in kind of, but the lift lifts the boat up. And I don't think, a lot of people aren't keeping their boats in the water just for wear and tear on their boat. So we could call it a boat lift cover, or
Jeff would be proud of you.
Jeff would be proud of me. So I think that, oh, and I agree with the, I think it should be will not significantly obstruct, because I think that's a good point. Will not obstruct, and be like, that's, you're looking to the right, that's obstructing my view. I just think that gives you more of a test to pass, that it is significantly obstructing your view.
All right, I'm okay with it. I'm always worried when we put a qualitative term in there. Engineers don't like qualitative terms, right, Joe?
Jack's a quality guy.
And I'll just make sure the attorney you don't have a concern with the significant, is that good? Okay. Okay, we'll add significantly to number 1. And do we have a consensus of what we want to call this? Because it seems as though dock roof is not the right word. You don't feel comfortable with that word, what we're
No.
calling it. But I think it's called roof in previous parts of the code, so we'd have to change it throughout to make it consistent.
Boat lift cover or a boat, it's a tough
So
one.
there'll be other places we'll change it, just so you know, before it comes to you, just to make sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I just want to clarify, right now, as it is, you could get one on the canal or in the archipelago. I just, as we go through with this, it's fine if that's what, people want. It's not an issue for seagrass as much as the Indian River Lagoon. That's the area that we really brought this under the microscope, but the archipelago and the Island Road Canal are closer together, but they don't meet that riparian thing, so.
So they would be, yeah.
It would be a lot more
You can
noticeable,
only-
so if-
You can only, you only need the alternative compliance if you can't meet the height because
Yes.
of where your riparian land is.
Right.
Correct.
So that's correct. They can do it if all their neighbors agree, right? That's,
And they don't have the height challenge, because it's.
Yeah,
all-
they won't.
Yeah, then they'll get it, yeah.
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 right?
Yes, yes. The only thing we're changing are for people that are restricted because of the way their land, the elevation of their land. That's only
Okay.
who it's for. But the other question, the variances, you're good, we took variances out because most of the things that are in there are required anyway by DEP when you get your permit.
Yeah, but like I thought marine structures are your seawalls or your, I just feel like why are we unnecessarily taking that away when we haven't used it? I'm not saying I want to, but I don't know why we would take that away if there was some other marine structure. I think it has like seawalls, the actual dock. I don't know.
Yeah, this is talking about construction standards and
Construct- yeah.
technical requirements, and it talks about, docks on canals not extending more than 25%.
Yeah, and I agree, we don't want to have to come back and put another thing back in here in 6 months.
Yeah,
So
That'd be a typical way we'd handle it.
you could just add a new thing, right? A new
Well, we could,
section?
right.
Okay, I'm okay with that.
We could tweak that language.
Okay.
Okay, so, once again, our direction is very clear, I assume? Okay. Took good notes. And you'll bring us back an ordinance for first reading at the next meeting?
Whatever your desire is, you would schedule, so that the motion would be the direction to us and to schedule the first reading to create the ordinance and schedule the first reading.
Yes, that's it.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Kurzman,
Yes.
Commissioner Fender,
Yes.
Commissioner Mayfield,
Yes.
Mayor Tompeck,
Yes.
Commissioner Campo.
Stepped out for a minute.
The record reflects Commissioner Campo is not present.
There it is. You could ask
One
him.
more second.
Commissioner Campo,
I'm sorry, I didn't do it.
Do you want to say yes?
Can you repeat the motion?
Right?
Oh, come on.
You made your calls.
as
You have a good lawyer, sir. Very good. You learn.
that a yes?
The motion was to do what?
To give Bonnie some direction to go back and come up to first reading,
The
of
workshop.
course.
Yes, aye. Sorry.
Okay, that brings us up to item 10C, which is office building septic to sewer conversion. Mr. Hudson.
Yes, sometime back, the town embarked on a path to convert this building and the two office buildings on this side of A1A to a sanitary sewer system. They all operate on septic tanks, and, well, we're there. I think we have agreements in place with the owners of the other buildings, and so we would recommend that you approve the two agreements and authorize the mayor to sign. Due to late negotiations, I will say on the two center buildings, they negotiated a little bit different language regarding the cash flow, or more specifically, the payment of the initial deposit. And so we would suggest that you approve both agreements exactly as they are, but give the staff the opportunity to go back to the other building and at least make the offer of amending it to incorporate the change in the,
It's just a different payment schedule, right?
just the payment schedule, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So that would be the recommendation, to approve both with that additional offer.
Commissioner Campo.
Well, I've got some comments and some congratulations. Before going into those, I want to follow the 3 rules of public records, and that's disclose, 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 for any fear of anyone having any misunderstandings. I am a tenant in a building that will be connecting the 3601 building. I've been a tenant there for 10 years. I have a fixed cost lease. I don't share with the expenses. I don't benefit from property improvement or expenses. I've repeatedly told the town attorney this, and the commission and political opponents over the past 5 years. Unless anyone's got any objection, I would like to participate in the voting and the discussion of this. Do you have anything to say about it, Glenn?
Just for the record, we've had this conversation privately and publicly several times, and there is no prohibited conflict of interest. Commissioner Campo has done all of his due diligence by disclosing his interest, and he may participate and vote fully.
Okay. Does any commissioners want to question that, or? Okay. Well, this is great news. This is such a final victory round for Dan Hudson. I mean, we're expanded septic to sewer in Sewalls Point, and we're heading south of A1A. And I'm excited because it's with people and property owners that want the expansion. It's fantastic. And first of all, the town of Sewalls Point Town Hall is putting its money where its mouth is, because we are first converting. How can you tell people to convert to septic to sewer if you're not going to do it ourselves? We have to come up with our own capital money to do this, that we could have spent on personnel or other things. We're replacing defective tanks in the 3725 and 3727. I go out there, I see the tanks, the pump trucks out there on sometimes 2 or 3 weeks. Those are defective systems. And I don't know the details, and I'm not an engineer. And we're replacing an older system on the bank of the river, which is probably 25 feet above the river. And again, not an engineer, but where do you think that stuff's going? We're converting about, I think, 12 ERCs, which is like 12 homes, to septic to sewer. And they're not just, we're not just putting it to the curb, we're actually connecting. So it's great news. I'm really excited. I think this is 5 years. I want to thank Kaya Mayfield for the hard work she put together in securing the money, because you always need something to pay for it. I want to thank Tom Adelot, who's the property manager of the buildings 3725 and 3727. And I want to thank Dan Hudson for finishing up a very arduous task with a lot of different professionals and a lot of detail. And it would be my honor to recommend approving the two agreements and authorizing the mayor to sign, and to approve staff to extend the offer to amend the Property Owners Association agreement referred to as 3601 to reflect the cash flow of the other two office buildings.
You have a second?
I'll second.
Comments, Commissioner Mayfield?
I was going to make a motion.
Okay.
That was earlier.
All right,
And then you took the second. so.
We have no, please call the roll.
Commissioner Campo?
Aye.
Commissioner Fender?
Absolutely.
Commissioner Mayfield?
Yes.
Mayor Tompeck?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kurzman?
Yes.
Mayor?
Mr. Torcivia?
If I could, I don't usually do this, but I've got to give a shout out to Jennifer Unicky in our office, because she does a lot of the behind-the-scene work. You know, I'll never see her. She worked really hard on these agreements over the last couple of months with Dan, and so I just want to publicly thank Jen Unicky in our office, because she really does a lot of the heavy lifting. So, thank you.
Thanks to her.
I left out your congratulations, Glenn. I'm sorry.
I really didn't do much
Okay.
lifting on this. It was Dan and Jen that they did all the work.
Okay, that brings us to item 11, new business, and we have a proposed scope of services for the town manager transition. Would you like to talk about that one?
Yes, I will. I'll take Dan off the hot seat for a few minutes. I really appreciate it's a unique set of circumstances where a new manager can come in, and there are so many projects that are in progress and have a good handoff. The Miami Dolphins couldn't ask for a better running back than Dan Hudson. So, and I didn't say Alabama, by the way. So it's really unique. And I think in this agreement, we have an hourly wage, or not a wage, but an hourly fee that we're paying for his consulting services of $75 an hour. And we're working on about an average of 10 hours a week. Obviously, there's more probably this week than we're going to have in the latter weeks, but it gives us an opportunity to have Dan around and have the availability of answering some questions, which is really a big plus for the administration and for you all too. If there's something that comes up in the history of that we're doing things, you can reach out to Dan as well. So, it's a great partnership. I think Dan and I have similar trains of thought. We both have been, really, I know I've been surprised that, I've come up with an idea, and it's something that Dan's been thinking about too. So it's really been great, and I really would recommend that you approve this scope of services.
I'll move approval.
I'll second.
Any additional comments?
I was just going to ask, and I'm totally in favor of this, and I'm super thankful for all Dan's done. I was just wondering, we should probably look at what's the budget allow for this? How does this tie back into what we've allocated for the year? For this entire transition, which was very expensive to hire a new manager.
Right. From my understanding, we had some room with the salary slippage that, we had between the fees that were paid to the prior manager. I haven't gone through and looked at the budget myself, but I think we can tweak it if we need to, but I think for the most part, the money's there.
Okay.
And I'll verify that and get back with you.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Mayfield?
Yes.
Commissioner Fender?
Yes.
Commissioner Campo?
Aye.
Mayor Tompeck?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kurzman?
Yes.
It's $4,500 is the value of this contract.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us to a discussion item, budget in brief. And Mr. Hudson, would you like to roll us into that one?
I think you all know Holly Vath. She's done work with the town off and on over the years, and we're thankful to have her. So I'm hoping Mariah will be in here shortly, too, to join us. She was called away momentarily. I think what I'm going to suggest is that we go to page 63, which is an overview of the policy issues. And what I'd like to do is kind of go through that quickly in a summary fashion. And then if you have any questions or areas that you want to drill down into, we can go from there. Does that sound good? Okay, so again, this is the major policy issues. Obviously, the property taxes, maintaining a level tax rate every year just avoids the ups and downs. You all have kind of talked about that already with when you set the preliminary millage rate. We were very fortunate this year that we had all of that construction that's been going on has finally hit the tax roll, so we have some room to breathe here this year. Under the category, I'm calling it fiscal sustainability, which was a phrase I picked out of some of your prior strategic planning workshops. We're instituting a budget by fund. This is a little bit more of a technical recommendation, but obviously you all approved the budget. We're recommending breaking it into three funds: the general fund, the building fund, and the capital improvement fund. The building fund relates to building permit fees and operations, expenses related to that. Those have legal restrictions on them, and it just seems like a good idea to set up a separate fund for that. And then the capital improvement fund gives you the ability to separate out those major projects and grants from ongoing operations that you find in the general fund. Also, part of that fiscal sustainability, we're recommending that you formally adopt your existing reserves. You have the $500,000 that you keep in operating reserve and the $1 million that you keep in the disaster reserves, but those are not formally adopted, so they don't get picked up in the audit. So if you formally adopt them by resolution, then that sets them apart in your actual audit. That's the reason for that.
Does that actually restrict is that the idea, to actually restrict that money? Is that what the resolution does?
Yeah, you would require a resolution to use money out of that. Yes,
Okay.
It would require a formal vote, and yes. The next item under fiscal sustainability is the funding for the fire rescue contract. We've heard mention of that earlier this evening, but it's going up over $200,000 2 years from now. So that's built into the contract, and we're very happy with the service. It's actually a very cost-efficient way of doing it. I'm not taking anything away from the City of Stewart contract, but we do need to program it into the budget, and since we have a little bit extra, it makes a lot of sense to go ahead and program that into the base right now rather than putting it off for a couple of years. I think the really big ticket, not big ticket, but the central important things for town operations, I'll say, is employee retention. You know, it's a really tight labor market. You just don't go anywhere in the country without seeing help wanted, hiring now. You know, I drove down Dixie the other day and just saw a sign by the water plant down at the south end of the county, you know, now hiring. You know, everybody's trying to hire right now. So the point is that we need to focus on what we can do to preserve the existing employees. And so one of those is recommending an increase in the employee wages, a combination of merit and cost of living. The second thing is accelerating the retirement vesting schedule, which should not have any direct budgetary impact. Basically, right now, I'm going to speak from the top of my head, but it's like 6 years that you have to fully vest, and so we're recommending that you vest sooner than that, and we can discuss these in detail. The other thing I'm recommending is converting the town clerk from a part-time to a full-time position. Update the human resource manual policies regarding leave accruals. Again, you don't have the details in front of you, but we can talk about that. And then updating the position control and pay plan to incorporate the cost of living adjustments. And then last on the list is the capital improvements plan. We did kind of an abbreviated capital improvement development this year. But we've got money in for the South River Road drainage. I'm understanding that it needs to be prioritized against other projects, and Phase 3 is probably the priority ongoing. We're going to need additional grants in order to fulfill the CIP. The CIP for next fiscal year, fiscal '23, is fully funded, but the years beyond that are a little bit more tentative, so. I've heard a couple of you mention privately, maybe we want to schedule a CIP workshop separate, so we can talk about that. And then two other points, we did prepare I call it a zero-based budget this year. We went through and kind of carefully documented virtually every line item in terms of the basis of the calculation, rather than just taking, this is what we had last year, and so we'll just put the same thing in next year. We wanted to go down into the detail, really down into the weeds, and saying this is what each line item is going to pay for. And then we also have some unfunded items that we have listed on page 79 that I would like to review for you. In fact, let me just briefly review those right now. These are things that are not included in the budget. One of those is lobbyist services. I've had conversation. This is Chloe's firm, Gallo Pavo. I asked Chloe to give a proposal to do ongoing lobbyist services. You were asking for grants. The town is going to be heavily dependent upon grants, and so you may want to consider that. It's not included in the budget, but depending on your guidance, we might want to see if we can move things around to allow it. The other thing is vehicle replacement. Probably in the next 2 to 3 years, you're going to need to replace some police vehicles. The other vehicles are in good condition. Capital maintenance, the town engineer had recommended increasing the streets and bridges and Sewalls maintenance. We had to keep it a bit constrained. We're working on developing a more detailed list of those facilities to project a more careful calculation of that. And then the other thing I wanted to add to the list of unfunded items is, you may recall when we were finishing up the comp plan, we had a number of items that require some additional looking at through the town planner, and that includes updating the LDRs and interlocal with Martin County, and also a water supply plan. The LDR updates are just under $10,000 proposed. The Martin County interlocal would be just over $2,000, and the water supply plan is close to $14,000. And we may, in the water supply plan, that was something that the Water Management District has kind of told us, even though we're not a service provider that we have to provide, we may want to ask the attorney to, just kind of go through the statute and see if we can devise some kind of exemption for that before we move into doing it. So that's my quick overview. So we can move down into either of those sections that you want to go into more detail.
I had a question, and I'm sorry, I should have gotten with Holly before the meeting, but I was wondering if you could give us a summary, and not tonight, just send us a summary of the ARP funds. Specifically, I want to know how much, I think we were awarded about 1.1 million or thereabouts. I don't know how much we've received, I don't know how much we've committed, and I don't know how much we've spent. So I'm batting zero here.
I could answer some of those questions. So we had received, so far we've only received the one payment, which was last year. It was around $550,000, I believe, somewhere around there. So a couple meetings ago, I don't remember exactly what meeting, but a couple meetings ago, we had brought an agenda item so that that money could be kind of spent this year on current operations. So that will be done before the end of the fiscal year. So that first 500 basically is going to take some of the expenses that we've already spent, mostly in public safety, and have the ARPA funds replace that. And then that 500 becomes available that we were going to then transfer over to the capital projects funds, because that's where those projects are sitting.
All right, the money that we committed for the, I think it was a stormwater plan. We committed, I think, 125,000 or thereabouts for the the actual septic to sewer study was going to be part of that.
Yes,
Is that in this year's, or is that for next year's?
It'll be carried over into next year. So we had done a budget amendment, like I said, I think it was 2 or 3 meetings ago, where we put it all in the current year budget. But what'll happen, and again, the town has not typically done this in the past, but really that is the best practice, is capital projects that were budgeted in the current year that got stalled for whatever reason, get brought forward into the new budget as a budget amendment, and we call it a carry forward amendment. Again, it's carrying forward those things that we didn't get done into the new year. The town typically has not done that amendment, but we plan to do that this year, so that project would move into the current year. It's currently budgeted in the current year, but it'll move into the 2023 budget.
And when do we expect to get the second shot of $550K?
Well, that's very interesting, because some cities, I was at the FGFOA conference, I guess at the end of the end of June, and some cities had gotten their money. Some people had that raised their hand and said, yeah, we got our money, our second shot, but we have not. Stuart has not, so we don't really know when it's coming. I suspect that it'll probably come, the state's fiscal year ends in June, so they have a lot of stuff going on in the summer with their financial record keeping, and they're the ones that are issuing the check to us. So I suspect that we're probably going to wind up getting it in September, October, like we did last time. That's just my guess, not based on anything other than knowing that the state, in the summer, they're working on their financials.
Commissioner Mayfield.
Yes, Mayor, I concur. I'd like a breakdown of the ARPA, just kind of how we spent it, how we said we want to, what we haven't earmarked. I think that would be.
We could bring that back with the, I guess, the first public hearing? We don't have another meeting before that, right?
We can just provide it, I think, in a memo.
Okay.
Yeah, I will send you a specific note about what I'm looking for here, so.
Okay.
Just want to make sure that because to the best of my knowledge, we only approved 2 items to be covered by ARPA funds so far. So maybe there's more items that you're using it for that I just don't know about, or
Right.
the commission just doesn't know about.
We're not using it for anything you don't know about.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't mean to infer it exactly that way, Dan.
Yeah, we'll re-summarize it and put it in a memo form and
All
send
right,
it
I
out.
appreciate that, thank you.
All right, yeah, I think that was a good idea. Few quick little things. Disaster reserve, the 1 million. I noticed, was it Dan that said that? Yeah, that formal voting to use. Now, what if you have a hurricane and we hadn't had a meeting? I mean, is it literally like you and somebody wants to come clear? I mean, can you?
Well,
I mean,
you're under emergency declaration during a hurricane, and so.
Then you can do it,
certain
okay.
things,
Okay.
Are,
Just want to make sure, okay.
yeah.
And I also want to say that I would like the capital improvement plan workshop. I think that, we have a new town manager. We want to go into a little more detail about it. We're kind of new to the capital, it was a big deal before, and I think it's important that we look at that at a separate meeting more in detail.
And I suspect some of our priorities have changed since we did it
Yeah, I think that'd be
over
helpful.
a year ago, yeah. Or pushed down or
For
rearranged.
that in this kind of a setting, like inside a regular meeting, this kind of discussion
Yeah.
is okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, this is more just curious, the update human resource manual policies regarding leave accruals. I believe you're referring to changing the maximum carryover provision from 120 hours to 240 hours. The payout remains the same at 120. So does that mean that this is vacation, they can carry it over to the following year and potentially have 6
Yes.
extra weeks? Is that right? 4 times?
It's not extra, it's
Well, not extra, that was the wrong
very
word.
long-term employees
Right.
get more leave,
Right.
and so they're not able to always get away and use that leave during the existing calendar year.
Correct. They earned the vacation, it's theirs. We're so
Right.
small staffed
Yeah.
that, I don't know if somebody has like
Do we,
10 weeks they do, but I think we have something about being longer than 2 weeks having commission approval anyways.
yeah, don't we limit the amount of carryover?
We do, and
Okay.
what we're suggesting is that we increase it from 120 to 240 hours.
Okay.
Now, they would not be eligible to be paid for that. We're not recommending the payout if they retire or whatever, but this would be a benefit for those longer-term employees that have been with the town a very long time.
Has there been some issues with that? Have people been unhappy?
It's always a challenge to schedule vacations for longer-term employees, yes.
Okay. And then, let me see if I had something else, sorry, almost done. Oh, last question. In the detailed budget, maybe this is more Holly's question. Under governmental services, the salaries and wages is similar, but I noticed the retirement and health insurance. Is that because now the town clerk would be full-time?
Yes, also, we're splitting it between the correct departments.
The correct departments, okay.
Based on the percentages that were approved last year.
Okay. All right, that's it for now. Thank you.
Mr. Daniels?
I was just going to add in reference to the ARPA funding, because we researched this quite extensively in another jurisdiction I was at. It's 1 year from when you receive the first funds. So, of course, there's, as you know, was brought out, it's all up to the state. They're the ones that write the check, but it's I wouldn't expect it any sooner than 1 year.
When did we get the first?
I think you said September, October?
October last year, yeah. That's right. Commissioner Fender?
Yeah, just a couple of things. What jumps out at me most is the long-term plan for capital improvements. I see we're significant shortfall every year after this year. So, and then I also see your note that additional unnamed grants between 1 and 2.6 million are required for future years. Do we have a plan? Have we targets? Do we know where, if, you know, what the risk probability is of attaining that level of funding?
There's like two categories. The grants that we're pretty confident on are listed. They're the hazard mitigation. They're labeled as HMGP.
What page
grant.
is that? It's on the same, yeah.
If you look at
I
page
see them there, yeah.
78 in the agenda packet,
Yeah,
those are,
But those are included and we still have the shortfall, right?
and you still have a shortfall, yeah.
That's my
So,
concern.
so it simply means we're going to have to put it into the legislative program. We have a list of available grants and we'll apply for those as they become available. There's one in process right now for Resilient Florida for fiscal 2023. So we're
I mean,
preparing an
are
application
you
for that.
hopeful? Is that an attainable goal? I mean, it seems like a lot of money.
I don't know that I can answer that, so I'm,
Okay. Well, okay, so I'm trying to find worst-case scenarios where we don't meet that shortfall. And I see right below that, does the town wish to consider a loan to accelerate some of these efforts? And I thought we had already approved that, didn't we not? I mean, isn't that a done thing? Which was part of the
You have
millage
in the
process.
past looked at investigating some state revolving fund loans. Yes, you've looked into that.
We only looked into it, we don't have an instrument in place?
We do not have that instrument in place.
All right.
think we are-
I might just say that when you adopted the resolution last year for the additional capital millage, it was contemplating some of that would go to pay for that, but you cannot use property taxes to pay for debt, so.
Okay.
Unless it's a public referendum, so that source is not available to repay the loans.
Well, interest looked good back then, yeah.
Still do.
Reckon? Oh, from municipal? Okay, I hope you're right.
But what we can research other pieces of revenue. You don't have a lot that's dedicated to capital, but you have some that might be usable, so.
Okay, well, I'm concerned about the shortfall and raising the point for creative minds to think about how to balance that.
Commissioner Campo?
I concur with Commissioner Fender. I think we constantly have to push back the urge to spend money on things that you can't see, feel, and touch, like capital improvements. And I agree with Commissioner Mayfield that we should dedicate some time to a capital improvement workshop and perhaps incorporate into that some cash flow of not just the projects, but, maybe is it like a flow chart of when the money comes in? Kind of like what you've done on page 77, but maybe, having a closer tie with the income coming in. Glenn, can you do something to get us out of the $14,000 water supply plan? I mean, they've already told us when we can water our lawns, and they don't provide us any funding. I mean, can you get them off our back?
Don't know.
I think you can.
I don't know. I'll try.
I think you can. Try hard. Try hard. Just miscellaneous things. We had a tree, I love the formalization of the funds, the general fund, the building fund, the capital improvement fund. There was a tree fund, which, it's just money sitting out there from people that paid fines or something. I don't know. Holly, do you have any idea? Is that just like $50,000 just kind of sitting there? I mean,
It was not set up in a separate account. I can research it, but the way that I see that those fines have been being used is it's just been basically put as other revenue at the end of the year, and it would just offset against whatever. If you had more expenses, you paid for other stuff. If you had less expenses, it went back to fund balance.
well, that's exactly the opposite of what we were told. We were told that we were going to use that for tree mitigation, and we would get new trees. It says Tree City, right? Tree City. All about the trees.
Is there a, do you know,
It was not set up,
or an ordinance that
no, it was
No,
a verbal type,
I
yeah.
think that's the point of creating separate fund accounting, which you
Right,
have not.
right. And that's why we paid how much for the new accounting? So we could do fund accounting rather than QuickBooks. And that was before your time. But that was the rationale, that we would have more sophisticated software planning so we could do fund accounting, which is municipal finance. But then something happened and,
Well, we're working on it.
anyway. So I still see the trees on A1A. I mean, we wanted this to be a tree city. Anyway, getting out on a limb again. So fiscal sustainability. I like the idea of bridging that hike. I don't know if we have to do it all in 1 year, because again, we want to spend money on capital improvements. So it's just a miscellaneous comment. I love the idea of converting the town clerk to full-time, because we keep her busy and she keeps us out of trouble, and we need to do that with all the projects that we're doing. And I think, April, you do a fantastic job, so hopefully you'll agree to take the full-time job. But we're
I
getting,
was assured of that.
okay, all right. Just because it's my business, the vesting schedule and the retirement plan, I think right now, the forfeitures, which are the unvested amounts that
Right.
employees leave behind, we get that back. So that is a form of income. So I would like for you to give me a record in the last 2 or 3 years, how much money we've gotten from forfeitures, because I think it's been, I'd say, serious 5 figures. So it is an income. And I understand the desire to have employees kept longer, but to say it's no budgetary impact, I'd just like to compare that. Does that make
That
sense?
was my word.
Okay, no, I didn't mean it, I think, I didn't like the fact that the South River Road drainage project at $535,000, as Commissioner Mayfield stated earlier, that number came out of nowhere. Joe, $535,000, can you talk to us about what that is? Or do you want to do that at the capital improvement workshop? Why don't we do that?
Yeah.
Okay. Easier. Yeah, probably be easier. But we don't want to get, leapfrogged. I mean, that's an important job. Andrew, I see you out there. But that number just comes from out of nowhere, and that's a big number. I mean, I'd like to have a budget, I'm just going to throw in a number of $10,000 to $20,000 to have a communications plan so that we can have better communications with the residents. We've got, increased costs with the fire contract. We're going to have a road that's under construction. And when there's a road under construction, guess what happens to the roads right next to that? There's more traffic, and people don't know about that. And they have lots of time to spend with the chief, and they think it's an inconvenience, and it is. But if we can get out front of that and inform people of that and let them know that we're trying to spend money on improving the community. I like the idea of the lobbyist because we do a great job of, getting in play, but it's a marathon, it's a marathon, and you've got to have a strategy from beginning to end when you work with the legislature, and it could just dissipate, if the governor doesn't sign it at the last minute. So you need someone that's up there and keeping their ear to the ground, and we need to have that tied into our communications plan, because the community, when the community wants improvements, that needs to be told to the folks in Tallahassee, because, that can go awry if we're not having a positive message sent out there. That's all I've got. I mean, this is more of a workshop comment type of thing, but I am thrilled to have taxes at the same rate as last year. I'm thrilled that we're spending, according to this possible capital improvement program, $6.6 million of capital improvements. That's 3 times our operating in 1 year. That's phenomenal, and doing it by keeping the tax rate the same. So that's very good work. Thank you.
Commissioner Mayfield?
Yes, I have to say it because you're talking about the software. I was a big supporter of the software, and I still am. I think that's what's enabling us to be able to have this funding now. It's kind of a long.
We just have to use it.
Yeah, it's a time-consuming process to change all that. So I'm excited about it. I think the whole fund thing is great, and we're supposed to operate that way, I believe. I was excited to learn that gas tax. I asked Holly, why is this in Capital Projects Fund? And she said that gas tax has to be used on roads or police work because they work on the roads, which I found interesting. I did not know that. So anyways, and I wouldn't have known that if it wasn't broken out. I like the idea of the lobbyists also because it's so important that we get these grants and finish this whole project, and to be able to see it through to the end, to Commissioner Campo's point, I think is worth the money. So I like that idea, and the communications, because that is the thing we hear again and again in our newsletter. I think it's good, but there's not, I believe the town manager has traditionally done the newsletter, which is not necessarily in their wheelhouse all the time at making the most excellent newsletter that informs our residents. And as I said before, I'd like to delay maybe at the next meeting. Can we do the capital improvement at the next meeting, and then we would approve it before the hearings? Is that, because I was looking at your recommendations and adopting the resolutions. You wrote adopt the capital improvement plan, adopt cost. Can we just delay that one to the next meeting? Will that work? The capital improvement plan?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not ready to do that tonight.
Okay. Okay. And depending on how my other commissioners feel, I do feel like that carryover vacation is a lot of vacation to carry over. If it is, I don't know, maybe we could half that or something. That's it.
Okay, we have any other comments we want to discuss tonight? We're going to obviously get a couple more shots at the apple here, but okay, that brings us down to commission and staff closing comments. Before I defer to staff on this, I thought town engineer might want to help us out a little bit. I was talking with Mr. Capper today about the potential for some grants on the septic to sewer side. And, it looks like the state is at least trying to get a feel, not necessarily the detailed application, but at least get a feel for what the towns are maybe looking for. And I thought maybe you could fill us in on that. And the reason being is that it's my understanding that there's a August 15th date that I think this is Resilient Florida, isn't it, Joe? Resilient Florida is looking for, they're just trying to get an idea. They've got so many millions of dollars, just trying to figure out what towns and municipalities are going to be looking for in the future. And I shouldn't talk anymore, so go ahead. You fill us in.
No, it's fine. I know this is a pretty sensitive subject, but I just want to make sure everybody knows, I've been working on Phase 3, as you all requested. Priority, right? That's priority, Phase 3. We got all this money coming in, we got to get it ready to be built. So that's a priority, but I was talking to Chloe today after we spoke, you and the manager, and she brought to my attention that there is a wastewater grant, which has a lot of money in it, that's out there, about 125 million, and that's a substantial. So, yeah, we haven't had the study finished yet, but we will in the next 30 days, and it's, to get the number down to where people played up north, it's going to take a lot of money, and the way we're going to need to do that is through grants. So I only want to tell you that because we really should turn in for that grant as soon as we can, because it doesn't come due till next year again. So, I mean, it can be turned in. I realize you're still up in the air of what we're going to do and what it's going to cost, but it's, as I think all of you know, infrastructure cost has just skyrocketed. And the only way I can get some of this done without raising taxes is finding more grants. So I'm pointing out something that I know is in short order, and we may be a little vague in the submittal, but we need a lot of money, folks. And this is a grant that will get us a lot of money. To get the amount of money we need, it'll be highly unlikely you're going to get an appropriation, at least one appropriation to do that. So anyways, I would recommend that you turn it in. Chloe says she can. I realize that may be critical from residents and so forth, but again, our point is to try to get this done as cheap as possible. We obviously have certain conditions that I believe is important to this commission as well as to the residents, one of them being no mandatory hookup. We understand what's wanted here, okay? We just, but we know one thing, it's going to cost money. And so anyways, it's a quick ask, but I highly would recommend you think about that tonight. So anyways, I know I surprised Dan with it, I surprised the new manager with it, but I think it's, it's not going to come due for another year. So, and by that time, we're going to have phase 3 done, and guess what? I'm going to have a lot more conflicts out there and things that have to be built around if you decide to move forward at that point. So you need to be making some decisions on this.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure is that the commission was understanding what we're planning on doing here. It's not committing us to do any work or even the details of an application, but just giving them the idea that, there may be some requests that we want to make, and here's about what it'll be. Go ahead, Mr. Campbell.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up. I mean, we want to make sure that there's as much communication out there as possible. I'm still under the goal of paving South Sewalls Point Road and doing the water improvement to get clean water into the river. I'm still waiting for the study to come in. I don't want the camel's nose inside the tent, and then all of a sudden, we get into what we've been before. So I'm going to reserve any commitment on my own to endorse getting a septic to sewer grant funding at this time.
Vice Mayor Kurzman.
Yeah, I still want to see an amount. I mean, this, besides this, and also we talked about having a vote amongst the residents. And that's something, it's been a hot topic, and I don't want to touch it at this point until we have something, at least let the residents decide, let's give them a number. And, if it's yay, we move forward with it. If it's not, we can't, out of respect. And I know mandatory, you're correct, is a big word. And anything that's mandatory is going to get shot down. I mean, that's what everybody said before that's up here. And we can't just, I don't want to go and make the same mistake I was making before. We go ahead and we just put something into this without, giving the town information. Once again, I don't want to hit somebody on the side of the head and not let them know what's going on. It's not right. And all along, we kept saying we're going to do, and I believe everybody agreed with me up here, is that they supported going ahead and being able to let the residents of South Sewalls Point make that choice. And if I could just throw a number out there, and then we can move forward with it. But you know, we could say if we get a grant and then the cost of hookup is $8,000, pending this grant, if we could do it, then we know where we stand. If they say yes, if they say no at $8,000, it's no. I mean, I don't want to go back on what I said.
And I don't,
Going to be more without that grant.
I don't think you're going back on what you said here, because, you know, if we do in fact decide that we want to ask the residents their feeling, how can we ask them if we don't have the information? How can we ask them if we don't have any idea what kind of grants are out there? We've got to have enough information to give it to them, so, but I think what's important about this particular issue right now is that they're looking for, you know, potential projects, and I don't think we want to be, we'll let this opportunity go by us right now. I mean, it's not committing us to do anything or to spend anything, but at least put it on the table that this is a potential project that we would like to look at for funding.
Will this obligate
No,
the town to do this thing?
I don't believe so. The answer is no.
We're filing an application, that's all we're filing right now. We're not filing a contract to do any of the work.
And what does that application cost us?
Whatever it takes for Chloe to put it together. So she only has a couple days to put it together, so it's not gonna cost very much because it's, like I said, she didn't have the time to do a lot of it. It's answering a few questions. We've already, you know, we know what, you know, generally what we're talking about is sewering up to 700 households down to the south here, and our intention is to just kind of say, this is what we plan on doing, and quite frankly, there could be any one of three options out there: grinder, vacuum, or gravity sewers. We know them, you know, we know what we're going to have to do. We have to, you know, those are the three options out there. Quite frankly, the fact of the matter is if you get the money, all good news. The fact of the matter is we're probably going to get a lot of questions after we turn it in, and there'll be more things to do. By that time, you'll have more information from the study, and we'll respond to those questions based on what they ask and what you guys tell me you want to say. So, I just don't want you to lose the opportunity, because you're going to wait a year for it. And we're building a road 1.5 higher down there, so just be prepared that when we come back and do it later and put some of these lines in, we're going to be tearing up some stuff that we just built. That's all, and I really don't want to do that. So we've been talking about this. That's the potential that could happen here.
Commissioner Mayfield.
Yes, just to clarify, that thing that you had said would come in by August 1st, it hasn't come in, the design, the preliminary, the sewer thing, but, right, this design, the study?
It's a study. It really
Right.
basically, we don't have all the information. There's some stuff that we still need from the
Okay.
county.
Yeah.
But bottom line is, you know, we know that any option is going to be more than it was
Okay.
from any study that you've seen so far. And and we already know that we want to keep the number in the $8,000 or $12,000 range.
Or less.
Right.
Any way you look at it, it's going to
Or
cost
less.
more money
Right.
than we've ever talked about, and we got to get that money
Right.
from somewhere.
I definitely support it, and just to clarify, because I know we've talked about this before, you said that we all agreed. I say I'm open to balloting, but I have never said that that would be the final word for, you know, septic
Good for
sewer.
you.
You're correct, you did say that.
Yeah, I said I was open to it, but I never said,
I
anyway.
kind of agree with that, because it was also mentioned when we talked about the balloting, I believe it was Mr. Fender who mentioned the visual on the balloting could be very bad. You know, we need to be very careful on that. Commissioner Fender.
All I'm saying is I heard a ton of accolades just now on $6 million of capital improvement projects without raising taxes this year, and we all went through a season of beatings for increasing the millage to support some of our road improvement processes. And you just saw a budget overview that showed a $2.6 million shortfall over the next 5 years of capital improvement project requirements. You know, we're halfway through, we can't stop halfway through. So if there's $125 million of grants out there and we don't at least submit an application for it, I think we would be doing our tax base a disservice. Our constituents should be angry at us for not trying to do everything we can to offset the cost of these capital improvements and keep our tax base down. So don't put too many words in my mouth about what, how I feel about not doing the right things for our taxpayers.
Commissioner Campo.
Just polish her off. I think we all have respect for one another's positions. I think that we have three strong voices to move ahead. Just my reading of the thing, and we could go round and round, but I think Vice Mayor and I have been kind of at the same place, and I, hope everything goes well, and sometimes you can have unanimous vote, and sometimes you can't, and this might be one that we just respect to agree to disagree, and, hope everything works out great on the other side, so.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe. Are there any other staff comments? Any other commission comments? I'm sorry.
Oh.
Any comments from the attorney? Okay. And Commissioner Mayfield first.
Just real quick, tomorrow's the first day of school, yay, so look out for buses.
Why are you so happy?
We need some structure back in our lives, so I'm excited. So look out for the buses.
Okay. Commissioner Fender?
Just one last word of thanks to Town Manager Hudson for his service and help in the town while he's been here this short period of time. Very thankful. Great to work with you.
And Commissioner Campo.
Yeah, I'll ditto that, and I'll welcome our new town manager, Mr. Daniels, and look forward to us all working well together. It's really a great transition, so thank you all for your patience.
Okay, can I get a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
We're adjourned. Thank you.